corridor of a facility, we see how a scientist is running desperately. Subhuman roars can be heard in the background, and his breathing accelerates even faster. His heavy footsteps echo in that long, narrow metal corridor, until he suddenly falls forward. After a few shots, hit his back. The scientist slowly stops moving until he finally exhales his last breath. A few hours after the discovery of the scene by the authorities, the body is transferred to a government laboratory. Once there, the two responsible scientists carefully remove his brain. They meticulously connect some wires in certain specific parts. Once they have finished, they introduce it to a cylinder filled with a very dense green liquid. Both scientists now go to a large console in which there is a large monitor. They enter a series of commands and a message appears on the screen.
Connection complete. Please enter date.
They type in yesterday's date and the screen shows a rewind effect. Then the playback starts. We see from the point of view of the dead scientist what he was doing hours before the incident. It was a laboratory in which he and a female colleague were working. His research was aimed at finding a way to stimulate the parts of the brain that we have asleep or that we do not directly use. After many mutations and errors, they managed to create an organism the size of a dog, but which showed neuronal results that went through the roof. It was extremely dangerous, and they took care to immobilize it. Hours before the incident, the organism began to scream in a desperate manner, as if its head was going to explode. And surprisingly, it did. From so much tension, the skull burst into 1,000 pieces, and all that part of the room was bathed in that strange dark green blood. After a few automated disinfection tasks, the two scientists went inside to remove the remains of the experiment. What they could not foresee was that something would pounce on their partner's head. It was all very sudden, and the movements extremely fast. After a bit of struggling, he makes out what appears to be a tentacled brain, which is holding its partner while it suffocates her. Finally, it collapses. The survivor is trembling with fear. He couldn't think that something like this would ever happen. Slowly, he approaches the body of his companion to check if she lives or not. But just as he reaches out to touch her, she turns and emits an inhuman scream. Her eyes are now blank, and that brain has attached itself to her head through the tentacles. The scientist runs without looking back and heads down a metal corridor. After an intense run, he is finally shot down. The last thing that remains on the scientist's memory file is that this creature approaches to verify that he is dead, and then goes to the door at the end of the corridor, through which it manages to exit easily to the outside. The two scientists stop the head projection, look at each other, and write in the report, "Very dangerous specimen, free. Execute search and capture order, dead or alive."
DisturbingStories.com